Okay, hopefully you guys heard that. Good morning. I'm Sarah Fargo O'Brien, and this is the Healing Hour podcast. I'm playing with something new as I've learned some features here on my Restream, and trying to add a little music to when we start. I realized a couple of weeks ago I was bobbing my head and nobody could hear anything. So we are doing something a little different with that. Today is an exciting day. As you guys know, the Healing Hour podcast is sponsored by the Let's Be Diverse podcast and Andrew Stoute. And Andrew Stoute is my guest this morning. He is going to explain a little bit where he's from. He has a background in HR. He's doing his own consulting stuff now. We will hear all about that. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, in case anybody has missed it now that we are nearing the end here. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. I am a mental health provider. For those that don't know, I'm a practicing psychotherapist. And mental health awareness is obviously important. So I want people to know more about it. I've had on some guests talking about trauma-informed care in different places and workplaces, in higher education, in learning about it, how that impacts mental health. And mental health care, in the future of mental health care. And so we've had some really great guests this month. Go ahead and check out those previous episodes on my YouTube channel, just YouTube/@timelesstherapist. Please subscribe, folks. The more subscribers I get, then, maybe one day I'm able to make money off doing this show. Who knows? But for now, it's free. And that's why, like, everything I do with it is free. And luckily my guests come on for free. Thank you, guests. Today, we're going to be talking about reducing the stigma in mental health care, and from Andrew's perspective, both personally and professionally, at his place in the world. I will bring him up in just a second to do our deep breaths and dive into some things. Let me do a little bit of a check-in. Y'all, I've been awake for a long time already, which is very normal for me. I am not an early riser. I am not a morning person. I do not like it. But I had to get labs taken this morning, early fasting. So I try to go before I have breakfast. And then I had a dentist appointment. And so I've been up since 6:30 a.m., which for me might as well be like 4 a.m. Like it's super early. So I'm actually probably more awake than usual just because I've been up for a while. And then after this, I'm sure I'm going to crash. Driving an hour already to and from my appointments this morning, and a lot on 95 North. And for those who don't know, as if there's not enough going on in this holiday weekend, VCU, the main university in Richmond, Virginia, is having graduation today and this weekend. So it was like nutso butso on the highway this morning, which just stresses me out and gets me all frazzled. And so that, coming back, trying to get settled. You know me, I'm kind of all over the place. I will do our 3 deep breaths in a second. Let me bring on Andrew and just say hello real quick, and then we will dive in. If you are here, let me know in the chat. I would love to say hello to you, give you a shout out. I appreciate anybody that is here. All right, so without further ado, let's bring up today's guest, Andrew. Let me take this off. There we go. I'm learning. I am not a podcast producer, y'all. Maybe you have figured that out. I'm a psychotherapist, but learning many skills. Welcome, Andrew. I'm so glad to have you today. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, man, this is so great. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for people that are watching. And Sarah, thanks so much. I'm so super pumped. You know how it is. I love having chats with you. I love talking with you. So this is like a great way to begin my Thursday for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths to get myself centered, grounded. Feel free to take them with me. You guys know why I do this. This is the healing hour, and this is one of the most healing things that we can do. I don't do it enough, so this helps me stop and take a break and get a little more oxygen to my brain and sort of settle myself. And then we will learn a little bit more about Andrew and then dive into today's topic, which is reducing the stigma in mental health. So in through your nose, out through your mouth. That elongation of the exhale is what gives your body this calming kind of feeling and slowing some things down. So that's why I always recommend that. So here we go. Number 1, take a breath in. Exhale. And again. And out. One more, folks. And out. Can always slow down a little bit now. I'm used to having you in the chat. Hopefully other people are going to talk to us. Oh, here we go. Lisa, hi. Happy Thursday. Welcome. So glad you're here. Popping in the chat. Usually Andrew's the one in the chat, guys. And I'm popping up his stuff. So I might be more quiet today than usual in the chat because we have you live. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you? What do you do? What's your work history? What do you do now in the world? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show. I'm, as you know, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a big fan of the show. So I appreciate you having me on today. As far as myself, my name's Andrew Stoute, of course. I have a background in HR and leadership. I'm currently doing some work. Podcasting consulting, and I also am the host of the Let's Be Diverse podcast. And my goal down the road is to do some leadership consulting down the road. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening, a lot of stuff in the works. So I'm a busy guy during the day, lots going on. Sometimes the days just fly by,
Right.
But yeah, I'm super excited about the future and the great things that are coming down the pipeline here.
Awesome. That's so exciting to hear, right? So you guys hear that? He does podcast consulting. Ha ha. We're on a podcast and he sponsors this one. Yeah, I mean, we see how that works, right? Like alignment. This is where we overlap. And Sarah only works with people in which she aligns. So that's how we work the best, right?
Right.
Again, if you're here, let us know you're here by typing it in the chat. I will be putting some info in there as we go along. You can also catch this on my YouTube at just YouTube/@timelesstherapist. You can also catch replays as soon as I get them updated, as well on my website at www.sarahO'BrienLCSW.com. So we're talking about mental health this month. I've had like a lot of my own personal work things going on, and so it's escaped me a little bit. So if I didn't theme these podcasts and I didn't like schedule my posts in advance, I probably honestly wouldn't be talking about mental health this month, even though this is what I do all day, every day. I just had other stuff going on. So I'm glad I'm even giving myself this space to speak out loud about mental health awareness, because for me, even in the mental health world, it can just fly right by and we're not paying attention, right? And that's true for me. I've been really busy with things, but here we are. So let's start with how you define mental health. Like, what would you say about it? You know, you're not a mental health provider or clinician. So what's your take on it versus my very like academic and clinical view probably of mental health?
Well, if I'm going to look at it in a leadership standpoint, I'm going to say that I think that mental health enables us to, as individuals, to cope with the stresses of life. And I believe it's all about our overall health and our life challenges. So I believe that when your life challenges are going to be not just that in your professional life, but also in your personal life. And I think those intersect quite often. So when they intersect, you're going to have some things that are going on in your personal life, in your professional life. And like I said, they're just going to intersect.
So how would you define poor mental health or when mental health is not good?
I would say poor mental health would be that you're a burnout, that you're overworking, you're taking extra hours that you are not wanting to take, or you're thinking that if you take them, you're going to advance yourself in your career. I would think that lots of personal things, like I said, going on in your personal life. So that's affecting your professional life and your career. And like I said, it's intersecting and it's affecting you overall health-wise.
Yeah. Right. There's a negative impact, which is, if I could spell, I'm going to add this for you guys. Negative impact of something, right, is sort of how I view that with poor mental health, right? What is your experience with mental health, knowing about mental health, educating about mental health? Like when you were in the HR world, was that a thing? Did people talk about it? What kind of companies did you do HR for? Was it important to them? That kind of thing.
So my experience with mental health is that a lot of people are scared to talk. We're scared to talk about it. I believe it's getting better, but I think that we're still got a ways to go. But people were afraid to talk about what they were dealing with, and people were afraid to show that they were dealing with something because it didn't want to affect their growth in the company or in the organization. So they felt that if they said something, that people would be looking at them a little bit differently. And we're going to talk about further things down the road here, I imagine, but that would be my mindset on that, is being afraid. And I have been afraid to say stuff myself. I will be vulnerable here today and admit that. And when we're afraid to say stuff, then it becomes very difficult, for sure.
Yeah, right. And like, I know that's the case out there, but I will always say, like, this is crazy sauce to me, y'all. It's 2025. I mean, my profession as a psychotherapist and mental health provider has been around so damn long, like 100 years, y'all. So the fact that there's still stigma to talk about mental health, poor mental health treatment is just like, it's so ridiculous to me. It like hurts when people are like, and I'm like, what? I understand if you want to have privacy, kind of like with your own physical health or medical health, like you don't want to share what's going on, in grave detail or whatever. But like, I don't think anybody would be like, hey, I have to leave today early for a doctor's appointment, or I'm going to be late today because I have a doctor's appointment, which is, of course, is what you could also say when you have mental health therapy. Many of my clients do that just to like avoid the conversation at work, which is they don't want to be necessarily like the mental health spokesperson, like, and everybody knowing that, but it should be more customary to be like, I have a therapy appointment, I'm going to be late, or I need to leave early, right? Or instead of just like taking a day off because you're actually sick, have cold, flu, throwing up, whatever, you could say, hey, like, I'm not feeling well today in my mental health. I'm not in a good place. I need to stay home. I need to take a sick day or whatever. That's not something people say, even if you're going to take a mental health day, you're going to say that you're sick, like physically sick, instead of like, my mental health is not in the best place today. I need to take a day. And I just hate that for people, that's never been me. Obviously, I work in mental health. And so there hasn't been the same kind of stigma. There is some, but there's not the same kind of stigma for mental health staff, providers, clinicians, or whatever to say, hey, I have like some mental health stuff, or I have a therapy appointment. Like some of those things are fine. Like, okay, so then we maybe this is interesting. This sort of just came into my mind. We get into this idea of like talking about like mental health maintenance, prevention, keeping good mental health, right? Okay, we're getting maybe more comfortable talking about those things, like, oh, I'm going to therapy because it's good for me. You can tell your employer that, tell your friends that. However, we still have a lot of stigma and fear, like you're saying, to say, hey, my mental health is poor. I'm in poor mental health. Like, I'm not doing well. I need extra or specialized treatment or care of some kind. Now, this could be an inpatient substance abuse program. This could be an inpatient hospitalization. This could be a partial hospitalization. This could be whatever, this could be taking time off, like FMLA, because you need to like address things with your mental health, right? Like people are still afraid to talk about when it's not good. We can maybe we're shaking a little bit of the stigma for, oh, your mental health is good. You keep up with it. You do preventative care. You go to therapy. Good for you, but it's like, oh, my mental health is in the shitter. I'm depressed. I'm suicidal and I'm isolated. And people are like, oh, whoa, that's too much. Don't talk to me about that. And it's like, okay, well, where is that person supposed to go? Who are they supposed to tell? Especially at work, like this at work. And like what you said before there, like, people are afraid about their credibility at work or how it's going to impact them or their performance evaluation or what their team or boss is going to think about them. I hate that. And it's so wrong in my book, right? Like, this is for like the world, right? Would you negatively rate somebody on a performance evaluation because they have high blood pressure or a heart attack?
No.
Broke a bone? all of those things are probably going to impact their work, especially if they have to be out. It's not going to affect their performance evaluation. But somebody says, hey, I need to be out because I'm in a manic state. My bipolar 1 medications need to be adjusted. It's like, well, you're not stable. No. It's like, well, number one, that's discrimination. So screw you. What you're doing is wrong. So let me just say that if you got away with it, you're lucky. And people have continued to be lucky to get away with it. I'm hoping in the future you're not going to be so lucky, and there's actually going to be consequences for leadership that negatively rates, treats, whatever impacts individuals, employees that work for them due to poor mental health or needing, mental health treatment, just like you would need physical health treatment if you had a heart attack, or whatever. What do you think about that? And you're talking about mental health now with me. It's very normalized for me to talk about it. I mean, I've been talking about it for over 20 years, y'all. It might as well be what you had for breakfast as much as I talk about it. But I know other people are not as comfortable with it, which is also probably why I try to talk about it more. So what do you think about this? And you were in HR too. Obviously you've seen, somebody's mental health or poor mental health impact their experience at work, whatever that might be.
Yeah. So my thought is that it's not even just about the community, may not even be about them. So we got to think of situations. So for example, I'll give you an example. It could be they are the caregiver of their loved one, and that is affecting their mental health because they're so stressed out about their career, and they're so stressed about the health of their loved one, and they're trying to manage and maneuver themselves, and they're not even thinking about themselves as far as their health wise of what's going on and with them. Their thoughts have turned to career and work, career and health, and their home life and their loved one. So it's super important to understand that it could definitely be something other than just them, but because of those two things, it is affecting their health. But they're not even, like I said before, they're not even concerned about
their own health.
Right. They're concerned about, oh my God, my job, and I've been away. I was away 6 hours today, because a lot of companies don't give free time. So they'll say, oh, well, if you have to be away a couple of hours today, well, then just make up the time. So now they're trying to find ways to make up the time. So whether it's going back to the office at I just talked to somebody the other day who's having to do that, and they were out for 3 hours, and they went back to the office at 7:00 that day in the evening and stayed till 10:00 that night because they owed 3 hours. They just had no other way to do it. So is that helping their mental health? Probably not.
No. No. I'll use all the words, right? No, that's ridiculous. Let me say, if you wanted that person to make up 3 hours, could they do it within a 2-week period, right? That's usually a pay period. Can they make it up someplace else? Can they add a half an hour onto days next week, whatever? Two things. If the employer expects the person to come back into work 7 to 10, shame on you. If the employee feels compelled to go back and work from 7 to 10, well, I'm going to need you to start learning about boundaries and self-care.
Right.
And so your employer may never care, and that doesn't mean that you can't advocate for yourself and set boundaries. One thing that I have noticed, and I do a lot of counseling around this and coaching on this with folks, is they are afraid to tell their work no, that they can't do something, because it's not good for their mental health, or it's outside of their scope, or it's outside of their hours or whatever. And mental health is big on that, and they're afraid to say no, because this is impacting my mental health negatively. Right. So in general, they just don't say no then to whatever it is, if my employer asked me to come back or expected me to come back to work 7 to 10, I would say things to them, as I've done in the past, You've got to be kidding me. I'm not doing that. Would you
Mhm,
do that? Oh, no,
mhm,
then you can't expect me to do that. That's the
mhm,
best one. It's
mhm,
like, oh, would you do this? If the answer is no, then I'm absolutely not going to do this,
mhm.
but I even talk to people, my psychotherapy clients, and they're just like, oh, I just can't. And I'm like, oh, yes, you can. Yes, you're an adult. Yes, yes, you can tell them no. Yes, you can do whatever you need to do for your mental health. They don't own you in all of your time, yet it feels like that for people, like especially at work. They don't feel like they have the autonomy to care for their mental health in the way that they need to. They're literally like a slave to the workplace, and it's like they let them make the decisions. Did you see that a lot, or have to do anything around that in your position in HR? Like, if people were struggling in that kind of way, like, is it something people would tell you about?
I'd say that I've had a couple of people that have discussed it with me to say that they were having some thoughts of burnout because of the extra hours that their manager has made them put in or told them that they had to put in. And I think it's just a simple fact of, and people are probably going to be, you're going to hear me say this word quite a bit through this conversation. It's all about vulnerability, right? So
Mhm.
we have to be vulnerable. We have to say what's going on in ourselves, in our mind, and and talk about what's happening. Because if you don't, then you're going to struggle with it because you're going to keep it in. So, and I'll be vulnerable again here today.
Yeah.
I used to be that person
Yeah.
where I would keep things in.
Mm.
And before I started my career, I kept things in quite a bit. And I was afraid to tell people what my thoughts were, what I was feeling. And then a situation happened where I was not doing great at work. And I promised myself after I got through that, I would never let that go again. So I became somebody who was not an aggressive person in that manner, but I would definitely go to see my superiors and say, listen, this is what I'm experiencing here. What can we do to, what would you suggest, or
Yeah.
what can we do to help help me get through this scenario situation? And it may not have been about even me.
Right.
It might have been about something else, or something that it was dealing with a coworker, or one of
Right.
somebody underneath me was dealing with a coworker, and it was just making everything snowball.
Mhm.
So I think just talking about it and coming out with it really helped.
What do you say to the people that are like, "Oh, I don't work at a place where I can be vulnerable with it." Like, because they have coercive leadership, or it's been dismissed, invalidated, or penalized before. Like, what are those people supposed to do if they don't feel like they can say it? They're not supported by their employer or their workplace to be vulnerable like that.
Then I would probably say to find another table to sit at. That's probably my thing.
So
I'm
you're
going to be very
saying new
vulnerable.
job, get a new
I
job.
Yeah, because I'm going to be honest here.
I hear you.
Things are never going to change in
Mm-mm.
that scenario. It's always going to be the same. It might be better for a short amount of time, but it's not going to be better. It's not going to get better long term. It's always going to come back. It's always going to recycle. So I would say look for something that's going to show, or organization that believes in the same values and the missions that you believe in, same core values that you believe in. Those are the things that I would look for. I know it's very hard in this
Yes,
day and
it
age to
is.
find something. I
Yes.
get it. However, I'm not saying that you quit your job right away and find something else. If it's that dire, then I would say, yeah, I would definitely
Yeah, do
look
it.
into it. But if it's something that is, you can kind of go day by day, whatever, then yes, I would definitely get out there, look at it, speak to people, build some rapport with people, have conversations, let them know, hey, I'm looking. If you hear
Right.
anything,
Right.
let me know. So it's not just about job boards, it's getting
Right.
out there and having conversation with people and actually telling them what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
And eventually something's going to come out. So if you're a hardworking individual, people are going to see that, They're going to see what value they bring to your organization, and you'll be able to make that change if opportunities, because opportunities are gonna come up for sure.
Yeah. And so we're still talking about like vulnerable disclosure, which you guys know in my trauma informed leadership and trauma informed care, that's not easy for everybody. And we can't expect everybody to do that.
Right.
And we're talking about people that don't want to say it at their job because it's not received well. However, we are still talking about vulnerable disclosure to the people around you in your network to say, hey, I need a new job because this job isn't supportive or respectful of my mental health or what I need there. So that is still vulnerable disclosure when you're looking for alignment and new employment. This was absolutely me. If anybody has watched or read probably anything I've done, you've heard me talk about my last job and public mental health and how terrible it was and how many times I had to advocate for my own safety, my own wellness, ethical things for me to like not engage in unethical things that the agency wanted me to do. Just a number of things that just to me were ridiculous across the board, let alone ridiculous in a mental health setting. And I was definitely getting close to burnout. I was so frustrated and looking for something new. This was my third public mental health job in and around the Richmond area. And it was like, well, where else am I going to work? Looking at group practices. Am I even going to stay in the field? Whatever. And all of that to get to, I'm going to start my own practice, which is now I started my own business. And then for you guys that want to know, like I was at burnout at my last job and started a business at the same time. I worked 6 days a week for 9 months until I could leave my full-time job and go full-time into my practice, which still wasn't even full-time yet because you can't build up a full-time practice when you work 40, 45 hours a week someplace else.
No.
But I did the best I could, right? And there are many a days I'm like calling my spouse and I'm like, I'm just going to get up and walk out today. Today is going to be the day I quit because so many shitty and crazy things were happening there. Yet, and as bad as that was for my mental health, I was working on my plan. It was going, and it would have not been great for me at the time financially to just get up and walk out of my job.
Right.
And I was working on building something, but man, it took a toll on my mental health, definitely my energy, everything else. And I do not have good things to say about that place of employment. I actually live in the county where I'm employed, and probably if anybody there watches it, they'd be real pissed off at me for like dragging their name through the mud. But like, I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about the leadership. I don't feel good about the way they treated employees. I don't feel good about what they pay mental health providers and licensed providers. I do not feel good about their path to moving up to doing something different. And I do not feel like they have support or provide support for the people that work there. And this is not uncommon. So if you're out there in healthcare and work in a mental health job, it might be one of the worst employment places for your mental health because they often don't care about the provider. And I still say the same thing, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease or gets fired, whatever the case may be, right? The whistleblower, the whatever. But that was always me going, wait, this doesn't make sense. Wait, I'm not going to do that. Wait, what? Like, and so many people are just like, oh, well, my job told me to do it or asked me to do it, so I do it. And oftentimes I don't think we think about how that impacts mental health, because if it doesn't align with you, align with your values. I was having such issues because I'm a licensed provider too, with things that were unethical, and knowing like, this is my license, even though this agency is doing crazy shit. Like, this is still my license, and like, I'm not okay with this. And then trying to advocate for that and let them know it wasn't okay with it. It wasn't going to change. And then after a while, it was like, I can't work here. I can't work here for these people. I can't do this. Like, I don't agree with this. This puts my license in jeopardy. My mental health is poor. They don't give a shit. That was obvious. I'm in mental health, guys, and they don't care. I was out there providing free mental health care to the public, essentially. And the people that do that work, they often don't care about. And so if you're in any industry where it feels like they don't care about you at work, like, that's probably true. And you should like lean into that feeling and again, look for alignment. Now, was it easy? No. Did I just get up and quit and go start something new the next day? No. Like, I had to make a plan. That was a while. I had to research some stuff. That was a little bit. I mean, all in all, it was probably like 1 year between I was like, I'm going to quit this job today, and like developing my plan and getting a plan, and then to when I was actually quitting. So I hear what you're saying there, even though, people are concerned and they think they won't like find another job or what yet. Yes, I think the other thing that we also have to do is like empower people in their skills, in their humanity, and like jobs need you just as much as you need the job, and so value yourself and value your mental health and don't jeopardize your mental health for work. We do that so much, or we have. I really hope the culture changes on that, but it hasn't yet. We know that, not at least over here in the West. I don't know how much you feel that up in Canada, but in the United States of America, capitalism runs. It's all about work and money and spending and more work and more money and more spending, and so work is often the end all be all for people. And work can be the place that's like negatively impacting your mental health the most.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been in a situation where I was worried about my job, and crap, I can remember having to go see the doctor and making appointments, and then it being busy at work and saying, okay, well, I have, calling the office and saying, doctor's office saying, listen, I can't make it today. Work's busy. Can I, I need to reschedule. And then I rescheduled it, and it'd be like 3-4 times. And then I ended up finding another job at another company. And then looking back at that company, I'm like, man, why did I, cancel those appointments for my health? Because I was worried about how busy it was, or that the job wasn't going to get done, or I was going to be asked, how come this wasn't done this month and you were behind. And I look back at it and go, well, why did I do that? And so you think about other people. There's millions and millions of people, I'm sure, that do the same, that have done or are doing the same things because they're so worried about their careers. And I remember my doctor at the time saying, don't worry about that. Your health is very important. He said, there are a lot of companies that probably don't really care about your health. They just want to make sure that you are there to do your job and get your work done. And when I think about it, and yes, they probably do care to some degree, but not to the degree that you're in your own body, and nobody cares about your body and your health more than you do as an individual. So I think we have to do that. And I think if we do that, then our careers are going to be better. Our work life is going to be better. Our professional life, our personal lives are going to be better. Everything around us is going to be better if we do that.
Absolutely. And, it's so disheartening to know that there are so many workplaces that really just don't care. And no, nobody's going to care about you more than you care about you and your own survival. That's biology. That's innate. Like you can't even like work that out of you. It's an evolutionary part of us that just exists. But if you are an employer or a supervisor or a leader, like it goes a really long way if you actually care about the health and wellness of the people that work for you.
Right.
And you really are leading the charge in reducing the stigma, even if it's just on your team and it's not at your organization. You can do that differently and you can support that. So let's get into like the big meat and potato question. How can we reduce the stigma around mental health? And for you specifically, Andrew, how does this look in your roles and work in the world? Like, how can you impact this? What do you see overall that we can do? And then how can you specifically in your roles, industry, and the work that you do have an positive impact on reducing the stigma?
Well, I mentioned that word vulnerable before, so I said it was probably going to come up a few times. So I'm going to say understanding that it's okay to be vulnerable, to say what you're feeling, to say how you were feeling, to say what you're going through. This is super important. I think it's be willing to listen. And when I'm saying being willing to listen, if I'm saying to you, Sarah, hey, what's going on? What's happening with you? I better damn well be prepared for the answer that you're going to give and how and what you have to say. Whether I think it's going to be a 5-second response or a 20-second response or a 2-hour response. I need to be prepared for that. I know some people are going to say to me, yeah, we, as leaders, we don't have time to listen to somebody like that. I get it. If you're talking to somebody and you're running out of time, you got to go to a meeting, then I I have done this myself. I said, listen, I really have to go to a meeting at this point, but I really care about what you have to say. I do have some time after lunch here at 1 o'clock. Why don't you come and see me? I'll message you or I'll Teams you and
Right.
say, come and see me and we can finish this discussion later. But like I said, just be prepared.
Right.
Don't just like walk by. Hey, how's it going? Not bad. You, how's it going? And you're telling me a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, hope your day goes better. I just have to get to this meeting.
Right.
So it's almost like you ask me as like a side thing with
That's right.
no
Like you weren't really
response.
interested, yes, in hearing what I had to say.
Exactly.
Right. And so if people feel like you're not really interested in hearing what they have to say, they're not going to vulnerably disclose anything to you. So
exactly.
and if you're in a position of leadership, I like what you said there, part of what I talk about in trauma-informed leadership is definitely vulnerability and honest, open disclosure, authenticity, and transparency. And some of that is like, hey, I'm glad you're sharing all this with me. It's fine with how long it's taken. I just have something I have to do. Let me be transparent about that. I don't want to be cutting you off. I have to go do something that I can't get out of. But if you have more to say, I have more time to listen, X day, X time, da 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 da. The other thing that you mentioned that I really like that leaders need to do is like, you need to follow up with that employee. Then again, expecting them to follow up and come back to you is like, probably not going to happen. I like, even if they feel comfortable with you, like that's like extra vulnerable. It's like, I get it. You were transparent and kind when you told me I had to go do something else, but that's still going to have like a bit of an impact. And they just in the fact that they were feeling vulnerable and opening up and then had to stop, even though you were totally appropriate in the way that you communicated that. And you had to be open and honest. And we have to set our boundaries too, which is like, hey, I have to end this right now. Because I have to go do something else, but I can circle back. But I think leaders often make the mistake of like, well, they'll come back if they need to talk about it. No, they're not going to. They want you to follow up with them. Number one, to show that you care. Number two, to show them it's okay to continue to talk about it, right? This is how we create a culture. We're openly discussing mental health problems at work, things impacting your mental health, problems at home that are impacting mental health, work relationships that are impacting mental health, the work itself that's impacting mental health. You have to facilitate this. This is often, if not ever, going to exist bottom up. You cannot expect employees to start talking about their mental health for this to become normalized, like in your organization, your nonprofit, your place of business. That's not going to happen. It needs to come from top down because that's how everything works. And so not only do you need to promote it and encourage it, right, in the people that you lead or that work for you, you need to talk about it yourself, your own mental health, your own struggles with that. When you have your own issue at home that's impacting mental health. And many people will say, well, as a leader, you can't do that. As a leader, you should do that. And that's all I'm going to say about that. If you should, period. If you're not doing that, then you're not leading anything by example. You're asking people to do what you say, not as you do, and you're doing the opposite. And like, that's not helpful. All you're going to get is obedience rather than authentic human interaction, right? And so we're talking about it, right? This is one way to reduce stigma. If you're in leadership, you lead the charge and lead the conversation. If you're in leadership, you follow up with people if they start to like even disclose a little bit to find out if there's like something else that could be more helpful. You encourage them to take care of their mental health, even if it's taking time off, even if it messes up a project, even if things get pushed back or whatever the case may be, right? Like I like to give, okay, people are like, you can't do that. It's like, yes, you can do that. Let me give you an example. We had the Trauma-Informed Leadership Symposium scheduled for Integrate Network that we did the whole month of March. That was virtual. If anybody saw that, grabbed your seat for that. It was really good. There were like, I think at least 10 subject matter experts that were presenting or training on different material for about an hour a piece throughout the topics that we had for those weeks. We pre-recorded all of those, and Julie's great. She runs an organization. She works collaboratively with people. She's an employee people. It's not a business. It is a professional group. However, there is like a system and like expectations, right? We sign contracts on things that we engage in. And so we had like a timeline of like, say you want to do it by this date, sign the contract by this date, have your material recorded by this date, right? And then we go live this date and you get paid this date, you know? And then the election happened in the US of A in November, and it threw a lot of people, is all I can say. It's been difficult for a number of people here, and including our trauma-informed professional group. And so what happened there is many people, and this was November, like 5th, actually November the 5th is when we had the election last year. And so our deadline for getting our materials in, I think, was like at the end of October. So some people had not done that. And then we're at November 5th and it's like, and I can't. Now I'm just, there's too much. I'm overwhelmed. I have other stuff going on. And so Julie did what she called a compassionate pause. We're going to pause like work on moving forward on this. None of us are going to do any work moving forward on this. We're going to push back the launch date a month. We're going to push back when you owe this to me by like a month or two or whatever to get it all in and edited and everything Julie needs to do with it, right? Before she can like put it out there to sell to the public. And so it's a compassionate pause to honor people's nervous system, their capacities, their ability to show up well in their role, to create good content, to train well. It's like people are not in a space for that. And it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not, or you want them to be there or not. It's like, this is the reality. She's looking at her group. She's asking people for feedback. This is what they're vulnerably and honestly disclosing. I can't do it. I'm not in a headspace. I'm behind. I'm sorry. I signed the contract. It was due by this date. I didn't do it by this date. And now I'm overwhelmed and I can't do it at all. Right. Or I definitely can't do it right now. And there was understanding there. Did she like that? Probably not. Is she used to that? Yeah. I mean, we work with trauma-informed professionals and all of us have histories of trauma, go figure, right? And so like stuff impacts us too and kicks up stuff for us that that impacts our ability to work well, to do our best work, right? To think of work things at all. If you're activating your nervous system, that's probably not the case. I love that she called it a compassionate pause. Like we didn't not do the work. We did not roll out the symposium. We pushed it back a month, right? And I get it. We're not a corporation. We're not bringing in millions of dollars, but like, if you are bringing millions of dollars, it seems like pushing things back a month really probably won't hurt you that bad. You know, like that's not even like the goal here necessarily. And it definitely impacts, right, people, even just a little bit, and we still pushed it back. So if you are saying like, I can't do that for my team, or I can't do that at organization, shame on you. Yes, you can. It's a choice that you can make if you are seeking honest feedback from your people and they're saying, hey, like, we're overwhelmed. Like when the pandemic hit, it's like, maybe we should all just take a month off and like let our nervous systems adjust to this, try to regroup and all that. But it was like, no, like business as usual, just do it a different way. Like there was literally no pausing of business here in the US of A. It was just like pivot business, which I literally did over the weekend out of town in Washington, D.C. at a training literally on March 14th and 15th. Before they put out like the executive order then. And I'm trying to change my in-person business to an online business immediately so I can still make money because the world is still rolling, when really it would have been great if we could all just take like a compassionate pause for a month, focus on our mental health, adjusting to this major thing that's happening, whatever the major thing is, right? And then get back on track. Asking people to sort of like push through it is, well, it does a number of things. Well, the work isn't good. It's not good for the person. It's a lot of wear and tear on the nervous system. Right. I could go on and on. So in your HR role, it seems like there would be a fair amount of influence that maybe you would have, at least like in the one-to-one space, or individual employees that are coming to you potentially over teams. Now in your like consulting work and connecting professionals with podcasts, with speaking opportunities and getting their voice out there, how does that look now? Like you're championing for reducing the stigma in mental health. How does that work? I mean, we can always do it in our personal lives, right? By talking about things, by being vulnerable, by being open to hearing people talk about their vulnerable things without judgment, you know, with curiosity. And so, yes, we can always do that in our personal life and your professional life, right? I guess.
Right.
How do you see, you having like a specific maybe impact on reducing the stigma in your work in the world?
Well, I think the important thing, or the impact that we can have, is definitely have more training. So a lot of organizations, they have a lot of training, sales training. They have a lot of customer service training and stuff like that, or tech training, they have some anti-bullying training, which is great, but we need some education on mental health. And it's not just for the people who are suffering with mental health. It has to be people who are not suffering with it as well, or never experienced it, because what that's going to do is that's going to avoid the assumption. So when someone is, Sarah's away from work for 2 weeks, and people are wondering, well, hey, where's Sarah? How come she hasn't been in for 2 weeks? And then it goes to the third week, and then people are like, oh, she just doesn't want to be at work, or she's lazy, or she doesn't want to be here. She wants us to do all the work. And
That's right. Yeah.
then you come back. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And you come back for a week, and then you have to go back off a month later because it's stressful or whatever, right, or you're sick or whatever. So I think it reduces the assumptions. And I think if people can just understand a little bit better what somebody could be experiencing, or what somebody could be facing, because it's not something that it's some people that they live with, or some people that they face. And it's something that people have to deal with, and they might deal with it a little bit differently than someone who doesn't struggle with that.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
We just have to understand that a little bit better. And I think if we do that, then I think it's going to be a lot easier. And like I said, it doesn't have to be somebody who's dealing with it. Just understand what somebody, your coworker, or even you might even understand a family member even better, a little bit better, because you might be like, oh wow, this is what I didn't realize what you were going through. Now I understand it a little bit better.
So what do you envision with that? Like, what kind of training? Like, how would that look?
Well, I definitely would have somebody like you come in. That would be something, because I'm not a professional in mental health. I understand it. There's things that I deal with as well, but I'm not a professional. So you got to get a professional. Leaders have to understand that we are not professionals, or we don't know everything. When we start talking about things that we don't know about, then we get ourselves into trouble. So when we don't know something, then we have to get people in who understand those things way better than us, and have those people come in and talk to our staff. So that way you can answer questions that we will not be able to answer. I talked about listening before.
Yeah.
I can sit there and I can listen to somebody talking about something that they're going through. I can be compassionate, I can be sympathetic, I can be understanding.
Right.
But when they start asking me what I should do, the next step would be, I think you should you should talk with somebody who's going to understand you a little bit better.
Right.
I was actually thinking of bringing somebody in to have a talk about that. I'm not sure when we're going to have that happen, but if you can speak with somebody on your own in your private time for now, that would be the option for sure, because I would never want to give somebody advice on something that I have absolutely no clue about.
Well, that should be all leaders, right? But like you've said it, like if they lead in one area, it's like, oh, we're just like an expert on stuff. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Stop it. Maybe you don't want to hire me at your place, because this is what I'm going to say to your leadership staff. But I would love to do this, right? And Andrew knows this is like part of what also I'm trying to do in my consulting, is to come in very well to teams, organizations, nonprofits, schools, whatever, and talk to people about mental health. Like, we can raise awareness about it. I can tell you where to find resources, I can tell you what to look out for and all of those things, because, and I like that you point out, like, your in-house staff could potentially like develop a training, right? A webinar, all the things, office ergonomics, how to manage a workplace incident, new tech, how to learn this EHR, like whatever the case may be. They could do the same thing for mental health, right? And give you some basic information, roll out a webinar or some slides and you go through the stuff, and it's like they could give you the information, but they can't follow up with you about anything if you have a question.
No.
Right. And it's the same if you do any of those trainings. Like I remember doing those trainings when I worked in office, and nobody's available for questions. I'm doing them online. I'm answering some sort of quiz. I'm moving on. Nobody knows if I learned anything. Nobody cares. I don't have to. It's just like checking a box, So let's be clear. That's not training anybody, guys. That's like barely educating them.
Right.
It's certainly not training anybody. It's certainly not teaching anything really. And so if you want people to actually understand stuff, what Andrew's saying is important. You need to hire a subject matter expert in mental health to come teach, train, and consult with your staff, organizations, C-suite executives, whomever, what students, like whatever the case may be. And there has to be like a willingness for that. Your leadership has to be open to that. I probably can't imagine anywhere where people don't want that. They may not say that. Again, like your staff may not say, hey, this would be really great. But if you brought this in, I don't think people are going to be like, we don't need this, so we got to start rolling it out. We have to start making this like more commonplace. This is how we reduce the stigma, right? And like, thankfully, y'all, there are people like me. I'm still a practicing psychotherapist. I've been practicing for 15 years and I consult on the side of that, right? So I still have very relevant knowledge of mental health treatment, what works, the newest things that work. I have to stay up on my education, what I see out there in trends, how this shows up for people in all kinds of industries, because I work in the one-to-one space. People could have any job in anything. And trust me, they do. It's one of the most interesting things about my job is learning about everybody else's job and the diversity there and how interesting it is. And so this is very doable. It's like, you don't even know how to put a slide deck together on it. Great. I will, you literally just have to hire me to come in and do it. And a number of other people like me. So that, and at the very least, like you have awareness, at the very least, maybe you have resources of like where you go next rather than allowing it to negatively impact you in so many ways, including at work. This is another place like reducing the stigma around this moves us more to prevention instead of treatment, and it's like if people have awareness on the front end, then we're in prevention. They can do things before it gets really bad, before it impacts their workplace, before they have to take a leave of absence from their workplace. We can spot things sooner. We can look at symptoms sooner. I just wrote an article on this and it's sort of, it's entitled When Showing Up for Others is Bad for Your Mental Health, but it's also outlining a couple of things that's like that you might not realize are actually symptoms of poor mental health. They're not stressed. They're not being busy. They're not just being, an adult and a parent. It's like, no, these are indicators of poor mental health and they're not going to go away unless you address them. But people explain them away all the time. Just that in and of itself is going to help move us, hopefully, away from the stigma and also away from like needing so much treatment, but doing the preventative stuff.
Absolutely. And I want to make 2 points here.
Yeah, please.
The first point is that if you and the listeners, if you are in an organization and if you are in that and they're doing training in mental health, my advice to you is don't be afraid to ask a question of something that you don't understand or something that you deal with or what to do in certain situations. Because other people may be afraid to ask the question, and so it's going to help them. But B, you're being vulnerable, and by being vulnerable, you're going to get the answer. So if you do that, then it's gonna help you. So that's my first point. And the second point is that if I think our misconceptions of mental health is for those who feel that it's just something that somebody dealing with mental health they can just get over. If you're saying to somebody if you can't snap out of it, then there has to be something wrong with you. It's not something that they snap out of. It's not a cold. It's not a band-aid or cut that they just take the band-aid off after a couple of days. This is something that they continuously go through. And when I talk about the training, this is super important because I think in the training and having someone like you coming in and talking about that, are they gonna, Are they going to really fully realize what somebody is going through, what their potential coworker is going through? No. Right. But what we want for them is to have a little bit of compassion and empathy for their coworker, to say, listen, I will never know what you're going through fully. However, I'm here for you if need be. And don't worry about, stuff, we'll take care of things as, if you're not there, we'll take care of it. So that, nobody, exactly. Because I mean, if I'm dealing with something and I go back and I've been away for a week, I can tell you that the one thing that I'm worried about is going into work that Monday.
Yeah.
Just because I'm wondering, what are they going to say? How are they going to treat me? Are they going to be rough with me? Are they going to be asking questions about why I was away? Right. These are things that you're worried about. Sure. So if you can go back in knowing, hey, my coworkers got my back, and when I'm ready to go back, I'll go back. And when you go back in, it's smooth and comfortable. I talk about a safe work environment. If it's you can walk into a safe work environment, then it's going to be all the better for you, for sure.
Right. And so this also brings up the point of like, I focus a lot on leadership because you guys have to lead the charge. But if you're not in a position of leadership, it doesn't mean you can't do anything for your own mental health or to support the mental health of the people around you. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to be their therapist, right? But having a compassion for them, maybe listening to your capacity or the best of your ability. If you know of any resources or any direction to point them, then do that. Also reminding yourself that you don't have to fix them and you don't have to have the answers, just to display compassion, and then that can go a long way. So even if this doesn't exist in your organization or leadership, yes, interpersonally, we can always affect change. I will always say that I work in the one-to-one space. And mostly have worked in the one-to-one space. Only here recently in the last few years am I working more in the macro and larger systems kinds of spaces. But the amount of change that we can affect in the one-to-one space in terms of somebody's health and wellness is huge, and then one person just getting more well, feeling more support, whatever the case may be, number one, we reduce the stigma for that person and then in turn reduce it for everybody else. Mm-hmm. Number two, maybe it like helps this person and like longevity, either at the job and life in general and their own health. So we can take personal responsibility at supporting people in their mental health and also our own mental health and championing for that, even if it's not in the culture where you work. That was me all day. I worked in mental health positions, but the mental health of the staff was not in the culture. And by golly, I was just the loudest one in the room constantly about that. Did not make any difference after 9 years, but I did not shut up about it. And I was never in a position of leadership. So, I mean, you can do that from where you're sitting, wherever that is, and extend compassion and non-judgmental curiosity to anybody around you. And so I like that you brought that up. And also, if you are, he's saying, right, guys, Andrew's saying, if you are in any sort of mental health awareness training at your job and you don't understand something, ask the question. Mm-hmm. If you start asking questions that your leadership can't answer, well, then they're going to have to hire a consultant at some point. But like, ask the questions like he's saying, so then you can get the answers, even if it's not right away. If people are expressing this, then at some point they're going to need to find the answers. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is like, we have to talk about it. You can't not talk about it and think we're going to reduce the stigma, right? This is why I talk about it all the time, everywhere. And I love my clients. My psychotherapy clients are the best. Some I've had a long time. I work in CPTSD. You guys know that. So that's a lot of trust building work before you can actually do psychotherapy work. So I end up having my clients for a lot of years sometimes. And I just love it when they come back and tell me like, so-and-so this or so-and-so in their life. And they're like, I don't know why they just won't go to therapy. I love therapy. I tell everybody about therapy. I say, you should go to therapy. I love my therapist. And I'm like, love it. My clients are out there championing for mental health and reducing the stigma in their own lives and the people around them. And a lot of it, and I'm going to say, a lot of it is because they like their therapist so much. We have so much rapport and whatever that they feel great talking about it. They're like, there's no stigma here. My therapist is great. She helps me with so much stuff. I'm going to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing better as a result. And that's affecting change in the one-to-one space that has a ripple effect. Not only is that person's mental health is getting better, but I'm helping empower them to talk about their mental health and how their mental health is getting better through mental health treatment, psychotherapy. And a lot of my clients are not shy to talk about it. And I love that. And let me tell you, they would have been at some point, and they're getting much better at even telling their employers, like, hey, I have a standing therapy appointment on Wednesdays at noon, and that kind of thing. And so in the one-to-one space, I'm seeing a little bit more, but I do heavy counseling and coaching for individuals to advocate for this. And I would love to see this on a greater scale, right? That's why I'm in these things. This is why Andrew does the things that he does, right? So the humanity quotient, grows, and we have more compassion all around. So hopefully you guys can learn, just step into a little bit more vulnerability. Make sure you take care of yourself on the back end in case that is not received well on the front end. I know that all too well, but we're really not going to get to reducing stigma if everybody just buttons up about it. Like, we do have to be open with it. Okay. What else? What's it? Last thoughts, Andrew, as we wrap up, and then give us some of like what you have going on right now, anything people can look out or support you with, how they can work with you, how they can find you, and any final thoughts about reducing stigma on mental health.
Yeah. So first off, my final thoughts. First off, I would say, what we have to understand as leaders, the difference between listening to give feedback and listening with pause. That's the difference that I would say we have to understand. As far as what I'm doing in the next little bit, I'm looking to I'm building on my consulting business. I have currently as of last October, or this October of last 2024, I became a board member for a nonprofit called Face with Grace. So I'm doing a lot of work with them on a volunteer basis, and I'm continuing to put out great content with my podcast, Let's Be Diverse. So the best way to find me, I'm always on LinkedIn. So that's the best ways to find me is Andrew Stoute, and it's with an E. You'll find me with the Let's Be Diverse logo. That's the best way to find me, and I'd love to chat with you, meet you, and see if we can collaborate. I've been knowing Sarah for a while now, and we've been collaborating on stuff for quite a bit now, and I can remember our very first conversation, and it's been great ever since, and she's an absolute I will say, Sarah, in closing, I want to take the time to thank you for having me on today. I know you don't like these things, but I am going to give you your flowers today and tell you that I just admire your electric personality. It just brings out everybody's genuine, thought-provoking nature, and it just makes everyone just feel so comfortable around you, and that's how I felt with you from day one. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for saying that. I'm so glad that like what you felt day one, it is still true today. That means, y'all, I am like living what I preach, which is authenticity, which has been like new work for me. Like a few years ago, professional Sarah, I still would be pretty genuine, right? Like I'm a genuine person, but less authentic, a lot more polished. So a few years ago, professional Sarah would like not say these things, at least not on a live forum and not all the time. I would keep it really professional, but that's not me. I'm not stuffy in my life at all. I'm not super formal or professional. I'm a very casual person, very personable in that way. I like to be comfortable and relaxed, right? And so I've just tried to bring that with me to work, and I'm so glad that that is shining through, and that the authenticity is illuminated for people around me, and the hope for that, right? Like especially if we're talking about leadership, is that authenticity breeds authenticity. If you're authentic, then other people feel good to be authentic. I'm not trying to be like Andrew. Andrew's not trying to be like me, right? I'm trying to be like me, and I want Andrew to be like Andrew, and then figure out where we align and overlap. And the only way you're going to find true alignment is by being yourself. So thank you, Andrew, for joining me. Guys, remember, Andrew and the Let's Be Diverse podcast sponsors the Healing Hour podcast. You have to check out the episode where I'm a guest on Andrew's show, and we're talking about achievement addiction. That's from like a few months ago, but you can find it on the Let's Be Diverse podcast list. As always, you can find me on LinkedIn at www.sarahobrien.lcsw.com. And please subscribe to my YouTube to see all of the Healing Hour podcast shows. Next week, I will have on another social worker. Susan Frager is going to be talking about medical billing, insurance billing, and all of those types of things, which is a real interesting beast in the mental health world and affects the mental health care of the providers using those things and trying to navigate those systems. Talking a lot about systems and mental health care this month, guys, and that's where it's at. If you need help getting exposure, getting speaking gigs, being on podcasts, getting more visibility, Andrew is your guy. So go check out his consulting work and see if that is a good fit for you. I will see you guys next week, Thursday, May 29th with Susan Frager at our normal time at 11 a.m. Thank you for joining the Healing Hour. I'll see you guys next week.